I've seen some of his performances and, some unbelievable performances at fullback. But yeah, a little bit unheralded because of other competition, I think.
Well, he had Minicello as well, didn't he? As sort of the other New South Wales fullback that he would kind of, I guess, compete with.
See, that's another one, isn't it?
Is the right word? But he scored 163 tries in 232 club matches. That's pretty good. But he saved his best for the most important games. 16 tries in 20 finals matches for Brett Stewart. And I just think, and 5 tries in 8 starts for the New South Wales as well. I think in this. So yeah. He had a really, really good career. He's a very, very talented. 5 tries and 8 starts. Yeah, very talented player. So definitely deserves to be in the conversation, Tim. So I think it's fair shout mentioning
him. Something a little bit more left field from Langers. So Langers says Richard Gay, an early 90s FC legend. Not a player I'm aware of.
Anyone remember Richard Gay?
I'll take that as a no.
No, he played twice for England in 1995, scoring 1 try. It looks like they were in the European Championships, though, so I'm guessing that wasn't the pinnacle of international. He played a game in the NRL, in the Australian League, the New South Wales Rugby League, as it was back in 1993. So, guy with a lot of skill. Cass fans might remember him. He played. Oh, I do remember him playing for Castleford. Yes. I do remember him playing for Castleford. I always thought of him as a winger. So maybe he played a fullback when he was starting out at Hull, and then maybe more of his Castleford career was as a winger. There you go.
Yeah. I know, because you say 90s and Castleford fullbacks, and I say Graham Steadman. That's the name that comes to mind for me.
Exactly. He was a winger once he moved to Cass. Spent the first half of the 90s at the Hull FC. Spent the second half of the 90s at Cass.
He had a proper tash.
Graham Steadman?
No, we meant Richard Gay. But
all rugby league players of that era had a proper tash.
Graham Steadman's a guy that we would have expected maybe Rob to throw into the mix. He was an elusive runner as well, wasn't he? He was another really brave player as well. I think he was. If I remember, he wasn't the biggest. Graham Steadman, if I remember right. Maybe I remember him wrong, but I feel like he wasn't the biggest. It felt like he took a lot of high shots in his time and still just kept running back hard.
Yeah, a real quality player, obviously a long-standing player as well. Played a lot of seasons. That kind of resilience. There's a lot to be said about that. So yeah, he was when I kind of was getting into the game, he was one of those names that I kind of you looked at when you were opposing him, and you knew he was a good player. So definitely.
We have one final viewing. Tim, do you want to give us that one?
Yep, Lee Whitnell at Whitnell said, 2014 vintage Greg Inglis was phenomenal. Today I'd go for Tommy Turbo at Manly. He's got it all.
Yeah, so a couple of shouts for Greg Inglis. What do we all think of Inglis as a centre because that was where he played his rep career, or do we acknowledge that for probably a couple of years there in the mid-teens, he was the best fullback in the game because he was the most imposing player on every pitch he stepped on, possibly?
Yeah, I think he was the player who you look at and know you were fearing more, probably in that backline more than anyone.
And that was a time where I think this club started looking at, rather than what skills they have to be a fullback, just thinking, who do I want to be the player who turns up on the end of most moves?
Yeah, and also, who do I trust to be that last line of defence?
Yeah, that's a huge part.
Put themselves in there.
But you're right, that's a huge part of it. Tommy Turbo proved he's a great last line of defence, didn't he, at the weekend? We just talked about that before.
Certainly does.
No one's actually mentioned the best fullback in the world right now, and arguably the second best fullback in the world right now, and I'm not going to say Bevan French. Someone's mentioned French. But Tedesco and Tuivasa-Sheck haven't come up in this.
Yeah.
I mean, they're two of the most exciting players I've ever watched. Tedesco's performances in recent State of Origin games and in Roosters playoff games over the last 2 years have just been...
Well, and even when he was at Wests, he
was a star there, wasn't he? Yeah, but that was in a team that was going nowhere, doing nothing. This is in like the biggest occasions, and he's the main man. Obviously, they've got great players around him in rep sides, in the Roosters side, where the salary cap doesn't apply. But they've got great players around him. But he's just always still the main man. And you'd think people would try and mark him out of games or force him into collecting the kind of kicks he doesn't like to collect, which is the bobbly, bouncy ones, really. But no, it doesn't matter what you do. He still strikes significant blows in every single big game he plays in these days, it feels like, Tedesco. I just think he's absolutely outstanding, and I think, if we talk about the lineage of great Australian fullbacks, and you go from, in my time watching, you go from Lockyer to Slater to Inglis, throw in Stewart, throw Minicello if you like as well, definitely. But he's up there with any of them, I think. I think he's better. I take peak Tedesco over peak Slater.
Actually, to be fair, just picking up on that one, we haven't talked about Lockyer in the first half of his career, where he was an amazing fullback.
No, and he was the guy who redefined the position to make it more about making it a link player. So I don't think without him we would have had Luke Dawn's career or Sam Tompkins' career, both those two in Super League being incredible players who moved from 6 to 1. Or even like Niall Evans now, he started as I think he might have potentially have been a half or something. These other players nowadays.
That idea is a third half, yeah.
Yeah. I think these players as kids would have been halves where they get the hand on the ball more, but putting them as fullbacks, and I don't think those decisions would have been made by coaches without what Lockyer did, and then proved it back in reverse going into the half role and being so controlled and composed there as well. My mind was always, and it obviously didn't come to pass, but Tompkins would leave us, go to the NRL, have a great NRL career, come back in his late 20s at Wigan and become the 6 that would see us through another 8 years or so. But it didn't happen like that, but there you go. Who else have we missed, Alan?
This guy will make no pure lists, but he was when this question was kind of thought about, he was the first name that kind of came to my head from a Bradford point of view, and it might be slightly, looking back with rose-tinted spectacles, etc. But when I first started watching, a guy called Dave Watson was Bradford's fullback, a Kiwi. He wasn't with us very long, and he had his off the field issues. Let's just put it that way. But yeah, a really spectacularly solid player for us. A great last line of defence. And yeah, for me, he was. He did things on the field that that kind of made me really want to go back and watch league on a regular basis. So for me, Dave Watson is probably was the first fullback that I really looked up to as a player.
He played standoff in Sheffield Eagles win over Wigan in the '98 Challenge Cup final, so he's dead.
Now that's a game I could watch again over and over again.
Paul, is there anyone else that you sort of think we've missed from either side of the world? There's definitely going to be people we've not spoken about, isn't there?
There is. It's one of them hard positions. Certain players will stand out straight away. And going back to Graham Steadman, I remember him playing for Great Britain. He was just an amazing fullback. And we were lucky. I think we have been lucky. We've been graced with some amazing fullbacks over the years. All who have brought something different, and the way that the role as a fullback has developed from the person who stood there and took the high bombs to now these free-flowing players who link into play to make some magnificent tries. I'm trying to think of anyone else. There's just nobody at the moment just jumping to mind.
So what do you think then, now, sat here in 2020, what do you think a top fullback needs to have? What are the, say, 3 or 4 key attributes you think that to be a great fullback now, looking back at all those different great fullbacks we've talked about? We talked about some who had great defence, some who had great elusiveness, some who had great speed, some who had great linking play. Where do you think that? What do you think the key attributes are?
I think they've got to have a good pair of hands. They've got to be able to take the balls. Vision. They need to be aware of what's going on around them. They've got to have pace. They're the first person who is going to make that possible line break when they get that ball from a kick downfield. And there's got to be a bit of versatility as well with them. They've got to be able to link in with play. I think it's that position where it's an all-round position. You've got to be tough in defence, have good vision, know what's going on around you, but also be there when them breaks, because when you've got that attack, as a fullback, you can link in anywhere, and if you've got that vision and that prowess to know what...
There's an argument that the fullback is possibly there has to be the most versatile player on the pitch for you. Certainly nowadays.
There was definitely something...
It's not enough to just be a good pair of hands.
There's definitely something in, like, it takes a lot more out of players, because Bevan French has talked about moving to fullback from being like a winger. He said, like, the actual, like, aerobic capacity he needs to be able to do that for 80 minutes is so much different. And then there's a concentration aspect, isn't there? You talked about vision, Paul, and it's vision in defence as well as in attack, isn't it? Because they're the guy, the fullback in the modern game is the guy who's counting the numbers and pulling the players off the tackle, telling them where to go, where to line up. And, like, you can notice some fullbacks are fantastic at that. Zach Hardacre is brilliant at organising the defence and spotting where the threat's going to come from when he's playing at fullback, whereas, Morgan Escaray isn't so good at that. Doesn't really pick out where players need to go, and someone else needs to kind of help him with that job. For example, as players I've seen up close and personal doing it, and stuff like that. Tim, what do you have to add on what are the key ingredients to a great fullback?
I think it's that solidity in defence is probably key, and if I was choosing between two fullbacks, I'd almost be more concerned about putting that in my team, that I'd want someone who I could just trust to be that, as well as being that pair of eyes at the back, calling out where the gaps are, but to just someone you could trust either under a high ball or to put their body in where they need to at that last bit. And then also someone who's going to join up your attack and just be that extra man coming in who's going to give you that opportunity and create the overload, because I think that's a key part of the fullback. And, it's always some way I always would prefer to have some pace as well, that someone that can spot that gap and have that vision and hit it. Which brings me on to my two more that I've got on my list that we haven't mentioned. Number one being Craig Hall, of course. How have we avoided this subject?
Because the only time that he actually consistently played at fullback, I think, was in League One, whereas everyone else has tried to find a place for him elsewhere.
I mean, it's great though, because I can mention him every time we do a back. It's fine. He literally played everywhere.
Yeah.
Right, we're only going to put
and then
forwards on next time Tim's on.
And then a very personal favourite, which is not necessarily the best, but the one I've enjoyed watching the most was way back in the first couple of seasons at Oxford, was Sean Morris. He had just an unbelievable ability to spot a gap, hit a gap, and this play that we must have run about, felt like 20 or 30 times, where he would be at the back of a scrum, pick the ball up and just belt through and get a try or get very close. I just found him so enjoyable to watch. And the fact that he'd never played league before Oxford started, and then he went through and went up to Castle eventually.
Wakefield, wasn't it? He went and got injured, and
Wakefield even, and then he got that head injury. But he was just from a personal, enjoyable point of view, there's someone who I really enjoyed, and a really nice guy off the field as well.
Yeah, I mean, if we're gonna mention some other names